The air in the conference room was thick and cold, heavy with unspoken words and simmering contempt. It tasted like dust and old ambition. He was across the polished table, my husband, though the word felt foreign on my tongue now, a relic from another life. Beside him sat her,
Sarah.
all sharp edges and forced confidence, the kind of brittle armor you wear when you know you're standing on stolen ground. I held the single sheet of paper in my hand. It wasn't much, just a summary line, a date, a name. But it was a grenade, the pin pulled, and I was about to drop it into their carefully constructed world. They were mid-sentence, talking about projections, valuations, the meteoric rise of their little tech darling, the one built on my inheritance. Their faces were flushed with victory, oblivious. I cleared my throat. A small sound in the cavernous room, but it cut through their chatter like glass. They looked at me, annoyance flickering first, then a wary curiosity. They still saw me as the naive wife, the one they'd so easily duped. That was their first mistake. I have something, I said, my voice steady, flat.
No emotion.
That came later. Something you should see. I slid the paper across the table. It was silent then, save for the hum of the fluorescent lights above. He reached for it first, his brow furrowed. Sarah leaned in, her eyes narrowing. They read the line. Their faces. Oh, their faces. His jaw went slack, the color draining away, leaving behind a ghastly gray. Sarah's eyes went wide, then glazed over, her forced smile freezing into a rictus of pure, unadulterated terror. It was the look of someone who has just seen the abyss open beneath their feet. They stared at the paper, then at me, then back at the paper, as if the words would change, would rearrange themselves into something less damning, less final. They wouldn't. The line was simple. Acquisition of Lumine Tech finalized. Effective immediately. New ownership. My name. Silence. Deep, deafening silence. The kind that screams. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know. Our life wasn't a fairy tale, but it was comfortable, predictable. We had a nice house in the suburbs, 2 cars, a dog who shed enough for 3. He had a decent job in finance. I worked part-time from home doing something flexible, something that left me time for gardening, for baking, for the quiet rhythm of our shared existence. We talked about the future, vaguely. Retirement, maybe a trip, renovations. Small, gentle dreams. We weren't scraping by, but we weren't exactly wealthy either. Money wasn't a stress point, it was just there. Enough. And then came the inheritance. For $1 million. It wasn't just money. It was the weight of generations, the quiet accumulation of careful lives, passed down. My grandmother's money, mostly. She'd lived through lean times, saved meticulously, trusted implicitly. It felt like a sacred trust, a responsibility more than a windfall. We talked about it, my husband and I, investments, securing our future, maybe finally finishing that conservatory I'd always wanted. He was enthusiastic, full of ideas. Financial guy, after all. I trusted him. Why wouldn't I? He was my husband, my partner, my other half. The assumption was so deeply ingrained, it was like breathing. You didn't question the air in your lungs. The money landed in a joint account. It felt safe there, a warm, solid number glowing on the screen. We discussed moving it to a different investment vehicle, something with better returns, he said. He handled it. He always handled the finances. It wasn't that I was incapable, I just didn't. He was good at it, or so I believed. I signed the papers he put in front of me, the complicated forms that promised growth and security. It was just moving numbers around, from one safe box to another. Or so I thought. Life went on. The rhythm returned. The money was there, unseen now. Working for us, he assured me. He became busier, more stressed, but I put it down to work. Long hours, late nights at the office. He'd always been driven. I tried to be supportive, making his favorite meals, ensuring the house was a quiet haven. I noticed small changes, new shirts, a more expensive watch, a sudden interest in tech news, which had never been his thing. He dismissed my questions with a wave, saying he was just keeping up with the market, client interest. I didn't pry. I respected his space, his work. The first crack appeared unexpectedly. A letter arrived addressed to him, but sent to the house. A formal-looking document, sealed. I left it on his desk. Later, sorting mail, a similar envelope, slightly torn, ended up in the recycling bin. Something about a private equity fund, an investment round. It meant nothing to me then. Just financial jargon. But the feeling, the faint, unsettling tremor, started there. A dissonance. He was talking about conservative investments, but these letters hinted at something high-risk, fast-paced. I pushed the feeling down.
Trust. Breathe.
Then came the phone bill. An itemized one, a rare occurrence these days with unlimited plans. But this one was for the landline, which we barely used. Page after page of calls to a number I didn't recognize. A San Francisco area code. We didn't know anyone in San Francisco. I checked the dates. Late nights. Weekends. The pit in my stomach opened wider. I asked him about the calls. Casually at first. Who do you know in San Francisco? He shrugged, didn't meet my eyes. Work stuff. Clients, he was lying. I knew the telltale hitch in his voice, the slight stiffening of his shoulders. We'd been together long enough. The feeling escalated from a tremor to a full-blown earthquake inside me. Suspicion is a corrosive acid. It eats away at everything you thought was solid. I started noticing other things. The way he guarded his phone. The hushed tones of some calls. The fact that he was showering the moment he got home. Washing away what? Not just the day. One evening, he left his laptop open on the kitchen counter. He was in the shower. My heart hammered against my ribs. This felt wrong. Invasive. But the acid of suspicion was burning. I hovered, my hand shaking slightly. Just look. Just confirm.
Or deny.
I opened his email. And there it was. Not just one email.
A chain.
Flirtatious. Intimate. With someone named Sarah. Talking about funding rounds, pitch decks, our future, our baby. Referring to the tech startup. Lumine Tech. The San Francisco number. It all clicked into a horrifying place. My inheritance. My grandmother's money. He hadn't invested it for us. He had given it to her. To fund her dream. Their dream. Built with my money. I closed the laptop. My hands were steady now, but it was the unnatural stillness of shock. The earthquake stopped, replaced by a frozen, desolate landscape. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Not then. It was too big, too grotesque to fit inside normal human reactions. It was a violation so profound it went beyond anger, beyond hurt. It felt like theft of the soul. He hadn't just taken the money. He had taken the trust, the future, the shared history, and handed it to someone else. He came out of the shower, humming softly. He saw my face. The humming stopped. The smile faded. He knew.
I didn't need to say anything.
The air between us crackled with the unspoken truth. The laptop was closed, but the truth was wide open, raw and ugly. What? He started, his voice hushed, cautious. San Francisco, I said, my voice a low hum, strangely calm. Lumine Tech. Sarah. He flinched as if I'd struck him. But I hadn't. Words were enough. Words, and the truth they carried. It's not what you think, he mumbled, the classic, pathetic opening line of every caught liar. Oh, I think it is, I said. I think you took my $4 million, my inheritance, and gave it to your mistress to start a company. He tried to deny it, of course. At first. Blustering, then pleading. Explaining it was an investment, a good investment, a favor for a friend, a one-time thing. The lies piled up, each one a fresh layer of insult. I listened, a cold, detached part of my mind cataloging the pathetic attempts to squirm out of it. He called her a colleague, a friend in the industry. He downplayed the relationship, downplayed the money. Said it wasn't the full amount, just a portion. More lies. The calmness shattered eventually. It had to. The shock wore off, replaced by a volcanic eruption of rage and grief. I don't remember everything I said. Shouting, crying, throwing things? Maybe. It was a blur of searing pain. He retreated, physically and emotionally. He became defensive, then aggressive. Accused me of not trusting him, of being controlling, of not understanding business. The gaslighting was another layer of the betrayal, thick and suffocating. He tried to turn it back on me, make it my fault for being suspicious, for checking his laptop, for not being supportive of his work. I contacted a lawyer the next day, recommended by a friend of a friend.
Sarp, no nonsense.
I laid out the facts, the emails, the phone records, the bank statements showing the large withdrawal from the joint account shortly after the inheritance arrived. The lawyer listened, her face grim. "This is tricky," she said, tapping a pen against her notepad. "The money was in a joint account. While it originated from your inheritance, once it's there, legally, it can be viewed as shared marital property. Unless you can prove it was explicitly for your sole benefit or that he acted fraudulently against you as a spouse, recovering it can be complex. And tracking funds moved into a private startup investment? That's a whole other level." My heart sank. So, he could just take it? Give away my legacy? And there was no easy path to get it back? The law, designed to protect, suddenly felt like a maze with no exit. Or worse, a weapon in his hands. The early struggles were against him, yes, but also against the system and against the crushing weight of my own naivete. He refused to cooperate, moved out, citing irreconcilable differences. The irony was not lost on me. He lawyered up too, choosing a shark who specialized in making things disappear, assets, accountability, the truth. Legal letters flew back and forth. Requests for discovery were met with obstruction. He claimed the money was a legitimate, albeit risky, investment he made in the joint interest of the marriage. A marital investment, his lawyer called it, trying to legitimize the theft with jargon. Meanwhile, I started digging into Lumine Tech, Sarah's company. It was a productivity app, something about streamlining workflow, the kind of trendy tech that gets buzz in the right circles. I found articles about their seed funding round. Listed among the investors was a shell corporation. My lawyer traced it. It led back to him. The money was there, funneled through layers to obscure the source, but ultimately it was mine. Seeing Sarah's face in tech blogs, reading about her vision, her success, fueled a cold fire in my gut. My money was building her empire, her success story. The narrative was all wrong. It wasn't her brilliance. It was my inheritance. My trust. My ruin. I reached out to Sarah directly. A mistake, maybe, but I needed to see her, to understand. We met for coffee. She was exactly as I'd pictured, poised, polished, radiating an almost smug self-assurance. "Look," she said, stirring her latte, avoiding my gaze. "This is awkward. I didn't know about the extent of, well, his situation. He told me the investment came from his own private funds. An opportunity. Another liar. Or perhaps just conveniently ignorant." Her eyes darted up, a flicker of something. Pity? Contempt? Before she smoothed her expression back into polite concern. "That money was my inheritance," I stated, my voice low. "Every cent. $4 million. She stiffened. I understand you're upset. But the company is a success. The value has increased. Maybe if you wait, when we go public, you could see a return?" A return? On money stolen from me. Used to facilitate an affair? The sheer audacity took my breath away. She wasn't remorseful. She was calculating. She saw my pain as a nuisance, a legal technicality that might complicate her future IPO. She offered me crumbs from a table built with my gold. "That money wasn't his to invest," I said, my voice regaining its steel. "It was mine. And you took it knowing or not. You built this on my foundation." She sighed, a soft, impatient sound. "Look, what's done is done. The money is in the company. It's tied up in assets, development, salaries. You can't just pull it out. Legally, it's an investment now. His investment. And frankly, her voice hardened, her mask slipping. Lumine Tech is going to be huge. You should be grateful for the opportunity. Grateful. The word echoed in the sterile coffee shop, mocking me. Grateful for being robbed, cheated, humiliated. I left the coffee shop feeling sicker than before. The legal battle was going nowhere fast. He was dragging it out, bleeding me dry financially and emotionally. His lawyer was aggressive, painting me as a bitter, vengeful wife trying to undermine her husband's legitimate business ventures. The money felt further away than ever. Lumine Tech was thriving. They were hosting press events, hiring, getting glowing reviews. My stolen inheritance was fueling their ascent, making them rich and untouchable while I fought in the mud. Everything seemed to be collapsing. My marriage was a ruin. My financial security was gone, gambled away by a man who valued his mistress's startup more than my trust, my history, my future. Friends offered sympathy, but no real help. Family was hesitant, not wanting to take sides, not fully grasping the scale of the betrayal. I felt isolated, adrift in a sea of legal documents and crushing despair. One evening, staring at the ceiling in the empty house, the silence amplifying the turmoil in my head, I had a thought. A cold, clear thought that cut through the emotional fog. Fighting him for the money through the courts was a battle I might win, but it would be long, costly, and leave me with scars and maybe a fraction of what was taken. It was reactive. It was playing by his rules, in his arena, the legal system he was manipulating, fighting for something he'd already given away. What if I stopped fighting for the money itself? What if I fought for something else? Something that would dismantle their success, their shared dream built on my ruin. Sarah had said, "You can't just pull it out. Legally, it's an investment now." Okay, so it was an investment. His investment. In her company. A company that now had value. Significant value. Thanks to the seed funding, my money, and their subsequent work. My lawyer had talked about the difficulty of tracing and recovering funds invested in a private company. But she had also mentioned that sometimes, in complex cases, asset recovery can involve going after the asset itself, not just the cash value at the time it was taken. An idea began to form. A radical, terrifying, exhilarating idea. What if I didn't try to claw back the $4 million? What if I went after the company? Lumine Tech. The very thing my money had brought to life. The thought took root, a dark, potent seed. It wasn't just about getting the money back anymore. It was about undoing their creation, about taking back the narrative, about showing them that you don't steal someone's foundation and build your castle on it without consequence. The idea grew, consuming my thoughts. It shifted the focus from being a victim begging for scraps to becoming a force capable of dismantling their world. I called my lawyer. I could hear the exhaustion in her voice. The case was draining us both. "We need to talk about Lumine Tech," I said. "Not just about the money he put into it, about the company itself." She paused. "What about it?" "I want to know everything about it," I said. "Its structure, its investors, its valuation, its debt, its vulnerabilities." She was quiet for a moment. "Are you thinking of trying to place a claim on it in the divorce proceedings?" "No," I said. The idea was bigger, colder, more precise than that. "I'm thinking of buying it." Silence again. Longer this time. Then a slow exhale. "That's ambitious. Lumine Tech is doing well. An acquisition would cost significantly more than the original $4 million inch." "I know," I said. The thought was terrifying, yes, but it also felt like the only path forward that didn't involve years of agonizing legal battles ending in a Pyrrhic victory. But I have assets he doesn't know about. Separate accounts, smaller investments he never paid attention to. My parents' legacy, not just my grandmother's. It's not $4 million, but it's something. And I can get more. I can leverage my property. I can find investors of my own. The lawyer still sounded skeptical, but there was a flicker of interest, a recognition of the strategic shift. It would be incredibly difficult. Private companies aren't easy to acquire, especially a successful one with multiple investors. You'd need a substantial offer, navigate complex legal structures, get other investors on board, potentially trigger clauses. It's monumental. Can it be done? I asked. With enough capital, the right strategy, and absolute discretion maybe, she conceded. It's a long shot. And it would be expensive. You'd be betting everything. They bet everything of mine, I said, the coldness returning to my voice. Now it's my turn. The decision was made. The turning point wasn't a sudden burst of strength, but a quiet, steely resolve that settled deep in my bones. I wouldn't just fight him. I would outmaneuver them both. I would take the very thing they built on my stolen foundation. I stopped focusing on the past, on the betrayal, on the anger. I focused on the mechanics of acquisition. The next few months were a blur of intense, secret work. I assembled a new team. Not just a divorce lawyer, but a corporate M&A specialist, a financial analyst, and a private investigator. The PI confirmed the extent of their relationship, gathering evidence I didn't strictly need for the acquisition, but that solidified the motivation, the cold facts of their deceit. The financial analyst dug deep into Luminteca's books. The M&A lawyer, a sharp woman named Evelyn who clearly relished complex, high-stakes deals, started mapping the ownership structure, identifying key investors, looking for weaknesses, opportunities. It was expensive. I liquidated every separate asset I had. My small stock portfolio, a piece of inherited land, even my car. I took out a substantial loan against the house. It felt like I was stripping myself bare, pouring every last resource into this single, all-or-nothing gamble. There were moments of panic late at night, staring at spreadsheets that showed my dwindling net worth being funneled into Evelyn's war chest. What if it failed? What if I lost everything? But the thought of Sarah, smug and successful on my money, and him, hiding behind lawyers and lies, fueled me. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my power, my agency. It was about proving to myself that I wasn't just a victim, that I could be a force. We worked in complete secrecy. Evelyn devised a strategy. Approach investors directly, quietly, offering a premium for their shares. Bypass the founders, bypass the board, build a controlling stake piece by piece in the shadows. It was risky. One leak, one suspicious investor alerting Sarah or my husband, and the price would skyrocket, or they would block the move entirely. The challenge was immense. We were up against venture capitalists, seasoned investors. Evelyn used intermediaries, shell companies, layers of anonymity. It was like a clandestine military operation, each communication coded, each step planned meticulously. We leveraged market timing, exploited minor disputes between founders that Evelyn's network sniffed out, and used the fact that Lumintech was still private and relatively illiquid to our advantage. Some early investors were eager for an exit, a cash-out that a public offering was still years away from providing. I learned a new language: term sheets, due diligence, escrow, controlling interest. My days were filled with conference calls, reviewing complex legal documents, signing papers that transferred everything I had into this silent campaign. My hands shook sometimes as I signed, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of the risk. My husband was oblivious. He was focused on the divorce proceedings, trying to minimize his financial exposure, still portraying the Lumintech investment as a shrewd business decision I was too simple to understand. He had no idea I wasn't fighting over the crumbs. I was planning to take the entire cake. Sarah was also blind. She was riding the wave of Lumintech's success, giving interviews, planning expansion. She probably thought I was just another messy divorce she dodged, a minor inconvenience disappearing in her rearview mirror. Evelyn's updates were terse, guarded. Acquired stake A, secured investor B's shares. Approaching fund C, it was slow, painstaking work. We hit roadblocks. An investor who wouldn't sell. A legal clause that needed careful navigation. Doubts crept in, cold and sharp. Had I underestimated them? Was this impossible? Then, the final piece fell into place. A major early investor, representing a significant stake, agreed to sell. They saw the offer as too good to pass up, a sure thing instead of waiting years for a potential IPO. Their decision tipped the scales. We had acquired a controlling interest. More than 51%. Legally, effectively, I owned Lumintech. The paperwork was prepared. The final wires transferred. The legal notices were drafted, ready to be served. The acquisition was complete, effective as of 9 a.m. that morning. It was done. Just like that. Months of silent war, culminating in a few strokes of an electronic pen. I scheduled the meeting. Ostensibly, it was about settling some final financial matters regarding the divorce. I insisted his lawyer and Sarah be present. His lawyer was wary, but he agreed. Sarah looked bored, slightly annoyed. They walked into that conference room, comfortable in their positions, ready to talk numbers, assets, division of marital property. They were expecting the same tired battle over money. They had no idea I had changed the rules of the game. Which brings us back to the moment I slid the paper across the table. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. My husband's face was a mask of disbelief, then dawning horror. Sarah's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Finally, he found his voice. It was a strangled whisper. What is this? It's official notice, I said, my voice still flat, emotionless. As of 9 a.m. this morning, I acquired a controlling interest in Lumintech. Your company, Sarah. Or rather, my company now. Sarah gasped, a sharp, broken sound. You can't. That's impossible. It's not, I said. My lawyers handled it. Quietly. Cleanly. We acquired shares from your other investors. Turns out money talks. Especially when the offer is right. And I had plenty of motivation to make the right offer. His lawyer, a man who specialized in being unflappable, finally spoke. This is highly irregular. What grounds do you have? How did you fund this? The grounds? I allowed myself a small, cold smile. He stole $4 million from me, my inheritance, and gave it to her. To fund this. Call it asset recovery. On a slightly larger scale than you anticipated, I glanced at my husband. As for how I funded it, turns out I had some resources you weren't aware of. Not in the joint account, obviously. You cleaned that out nicely. He stared at me, his eyes wide, pupils dilated. The smug confidence, the carefully constructed facade of the wronged husband evaporated, leaving behind a scared, pathetic man. He stammered, something about it being illegal unfair. Illegal? I chuckled, a dry, brittle sound. Is that what you call it when someone uses stolen funds to build a company? No, what I did was entirely legal. A hostile takeover, perhaps, but perfectly above board. Your initial investment, however, I let the implication hang in the air. The shell corporations, the obscured source of funds, my funds. It wouldn't look good if investigated. Sarah started to cry, quiet, shaking sobs. The company, everything. Yes, I said, meeting her eyes directly. Everything. Built on my back. With my money. Consider this a restructuring. The plot twist wasn't just that I won.
It was how.
They thought they were smart, that they had moved the money into an untouchable asset, something I couldn't touch in a divorce fight over cash. They underestimated me completely. They thought I was fighting for $4 million. I fought for control, for vindication, for the ultimate, irrefutable proof that their success was a lie built on my foundation. He sat there, frozen, the color gone from his face. The man who had confidently lied, manipulated, and stolen. He was blindsided. He couldn't bluster his way out of this. He couldn't gaslight his way out. He couldn't hide. His investment, his affair, his betrayal, it had all culminated in this moment, the total collapse of their shared project, delivered by the woman he had wronged. I stood up. The air was still thick, but the tension had shifted. It was no longer my tension, it was theirs. My lawyer has the necessary documents for the transfer of ownership, I said, addressing his lawyer and, through him, them. As the majority shareholder, I'll be making decisions regarding the company's future. You'll be hearing from my team. I looked at my husband one last time. There was no anger left, just a vast, empty space where trust used to be. And a cold, hard satisfaction. Don't contact me. All communication goes through counsel. I walked out of the conference room. The silence followed me into the hallway. Walking away from that room, the feeling was a complex mixture. Triumph, yes, sharp and clean, but also exhaustion, deep and bone-weary.
And sadness.
An immense, hollow sadness for the life that was gone, the person I thought I knew, the future I had envisioned. The victory was absolute, but it came at a cost that went beyond the millions I'd spent. Lumintech, my company now. The irony was almost unbearable. The thing they had built with my stolen legacy was now legally mine. I kept it for a time. Not because I wanted to be a tech mogul, but as a statement, a monument to their betrayal and my unexpected strength. My team went in, cleaned house, dealt with the fallout. It was another brutal process, detached and clinical. The company itself was sound. Their idea had merit. It was the foundation that was rotten. Eventually, I sold it. Not for profit, not really. Just to be done with it. To sever the last tangible link to their deceit. The amount was substantial, more than I'd spent on the acquisition, certainly more than the original $4 million. But it wasn't about the money anymore. It hadn't been for a long time. The divorce went through quickly after that meeting. He had no leverage left. He lost everything. The money, the mistress, the illusion of his own cleverness, his reputation when the quiet whispers about the acquisition started circulating in financial circles. Sarah was left with nothing but a ruined company name and the bitter taste of ambition built on stolen goods. I never saw or spoke to either of them again. The house felt too big afterward, too full of ghosts. I sold it too. Downsized. Simplified. I didn't need the symbols of that old life. The inheritance, the second one, my parents' legacy, the money from selling Lumintech, it gave me financial freedom I hadn't had before. But the real freedom wasn't in the money. It was in knowing I had faced the worst kind of betrayal, and not just survived, but strategically, ruthlessly won. I learned that trust is a gift, not a given. That the quiet ones can sometimes be the most dangerous when pushed too far. That vengeance, when served cold and calculated, can be incredibly satisfying, but it doesn't heal the wound entirely. The scar remains. But it's a different kind of scar. Not one of victimhood, but one of survival. Of transformation. I went into that fire as one person, trusting, perhaps naive, certainly wounded. I came out another, sharper, colder in some ways, but also fiercely self-reliant. The quiet rhythm of my life returned, but it was a new rhythm. It was mine alone, no longer defined by a shared future that was a lie, but by a present I built, brick by hard-won brick, on solid ground. Not on a foundation of stolen gold, but on the bedrock of my own unexpected strength. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear a version. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.